What's up, everybody? It's the Sports Code aka, and welcome back to another video. The recent boxing match has just ended. Boxing event in Miami, Florida. I'm relatively new to boxing, so I'm gonna go and review based on what I know personally, and I might not know as much as the next guy, but I'm just gonna give my thoughts before we get started. I'm only 2 subscribers away from 10, so if anybody watching, hit the subscribe button and let's get started. So I only watched the main card fights, so obviously there were 4 of them. We'll start off with Roman versus Al-Makhachev, and this fight went the distance. It went 12 rounds. Now there was news that Roman had a shoulder injury, and this fight was not recommended to him by his trainers, his side, and but he still took the fight. It was a good fight. I really believe it was a good fight. It wasn't as vicious or violent as the fights coming, but I just want to say that there was true ability and technique here. It was probably the most technical fight out of the fights that I saw, and yeah, it was a good fight. 12 rounds it went to, and I think Al-Khadiv, or I'm sorry if I said that name wrong, it's pretty hard to pronounce. I think he was clearly the better fighter. He had a lot of shots thrown. He hit, I think it was speed versus tactical punches, and I think the speed won. He outpaced Roman the entire fight, and I think it was a pretty dominant victory as well. I know it was only a split decision win, and he's the new champion, but I do think this was probably the right choice. It really depends on which way you want to decide it, I guess, because Roman had a lot of really good punches thrown, but there just wasn't as much thrown compared to his opponent. So I think this was the right result. I did like the beginning. I did like the start for Roman, but he just ended up not capitalizing maybe as much as he did in his other fights. So I think maybe a rematch is in order, because this was a really good fight. I would love to see a rematch between the two, and we'll see how it goes. Only 8 fights for the winner, and he's done incredible. He's done an incredible job for his country. So congratulations to him. We'll go to the second fight that happened, which was Diaz versus Farmer. Now this fight was brutal. And it also went the distance. But Diaz is the new champion, and I think rightfully deserved. I don't know much about these 2 fighters, but instantly when I saw the Kobe Bryant jersey, you already knew I was going to go for Diaz. And I think that cut that got him, I believe, in the first or second round, that what was a vicious cut, nasty cut, right where the eye is, and that's going to need a lot of stitches to shut. But that was vicious. I think that fight probably could have been stopped, and no one would have complained just by how vicious that cut was. But the fight kept going, and Diaz was a monster tonight. I think Farmer overlooked him. I mean, 8 years without a loss is a pretty long time, so maybe he just got a bit overconfident, and then that ended up being his downfall. Also think there was a lot of talk about him cutting weight wrong and just losing weight the wrong way, or making weight the wrong way, and that ended up costing him. He got very tired. He didn't seem to be throwing as much. His legs weren't underneath him, and that was also a reason. Now the release, apparently the contract has an automatic rematch, so this is probably going to be a fight that will happen again as well. And this was a good fight. I'm really happy that I got to see different styles. I'm still learning the game of boxing. I'll talk about Jake Paul and Gib, and that will be the last fight that I talk about, because these guys are the reasons why I'm into boxing, really, and I'm gonna keep going into boxing. So we'll talk about them later. But yeah, I think Diaz was rightfully the winner here. I think without a shadow of a doubt, unanimous decision. It was as well. So very clear and obvious winner there. But there is going to be a rematch. I think maybe with a proper training camp and a proper execution of your diet and making weight the right way will probably help Farmer, because being undefeated for 8 years is nothing it's something that it means a lot. And maybe overlooking, he probably should learn his lesson from that as well. You don't ever overlook your opponents. and maybe overconfidence, but also just probably not preparing right. So you got to prepare for your fights, and maybe in the rematch, all those mistakes that he made will be rectified. Fighters, it's probably the toughest sport when it comes to winning and losing, because it's all down to you. And it's so much different to a team sport. So he has to accept his loss and where he went wrong, and he has to come again, and that's probably the toughest thing to do when you lose. So yeah, I think that's going to be an interesting fight. I'm looking forward to whenever that happens. We'll go to the last fight, the main event, because obviously Gib and Jake Paul was next, but I'm going to talk about that at the end of the video. So you've got Andre versus Kila. I don't really know how to say that name either. I'm sorry if I stuffed that up in any way. This fight ended in a round 9 TKO. It was a knockout, and this was probably the most dominant, besides the Jake Paul and Gib fight, that happened on the main card. I think Andre was pretty dominant here. I think the first 20, not even probably one of the fastest knockdowns I've seen in a long time. Just went in, done, and he went down. But also, I think he got a little bit overconfident as well. He definitely got a little bit overconfident with his he was going for it again and again and again, and he just couldn't get it. And I'm surprised this went a little bit. I thought this was as soon as that knockdown happened and that round 1 was finished, I thought maybe round 4 this would end. But I think round 9 is it's a pretty good result for the loser of the fight. I think Andre was definitely the dominant fighter. I think once he decided to calm down and actually go to his game plan instead of looking for a knockout every round, I think that's when he got what he needed. He got what he wanted, and he's 30 wins and 30 fights and 30 wins. He's undefeated as well, it looks like. So that's an impressive feat, really. I'm just getting to know these fighters, so I don't know much about them. I know that majority of these fighters had pretty tough press conferences and weigh-ins, and there wasn't a lot of respect shown for these fighters. Maybe the first fight there was some respect. The others, there wasn't really much. You could definitely show that the way that they were fought, that there wasn't much respect between them. But at the end of the fight, you obviously respect your opponents. I mean, getting into a ring and punching someone's head off, you got to respect the other guy for taking it and trying to do the same to you. So finally, the Anesongib versus Jake Paul fight. Now, for anybody that doesn't know, I might be a sports YouTuber, but I also am very well versed into the YouTube universe. I know about both of these guys. I've known about Anesongib well before most people did, and I've obviously known about KSI. I've learnt about Jake Paul over the last couple of years, and despite what I think about them as people, I think this victory was pretty dominant, and it's undeniable that Jake Paul was obviously the better fighter on the night, and probably the better fighter overall. I know Twitter is absolutely going in on Gib at the moment. For anybody that doesn't know, round 1 TKO, technical knockout, in about 2.5 minutes. I think Jake Paul absolutely ran circles around Gib in those 2.5 minutes. And yeah, look, I'm going to be honest. I never liked Jake Paul, but I also would never deny his boxing ability, because he's won a fight before. I think a lot of people forget that fight against Deji, but that was a good fight. But that was also a Jake Paul that just started out in boxing, and it was the same for Deji. So yeah, that fight was not what people should have expected here, because Jake Paul obviously had so much more time to train, and same with Gibbs. So obviously we're going to come out different fighters. This isn't the amateurs anymore. These are the pros. These two were what everybody wanted to see, and I'm sure a lot of people are disappointed by the result that they got. But yeah, I like Gib. I really do. I think Gib is a hilarious person, and I think that he probably didn't get what he deserved out of this fight. But it is what it is. This is boxing. And I think his game plan was an absolute joke, in my opinion. I think crouching, first of all, when you're the shorter person, you don't have the reach, you don't have the weight advantage. I don't think crouching is the best idea. I understand you're trying to get underneath your opponent, but crouching is just not the way. Get rid of your balance, and it's why you saw a few knockdowns in the first couple of minutes, because he was ducking, he was crouching, he was basically squatting the entire match and the entire fight, and it wasn't good game. It wasn't a good game plan. I think I'm hoping Vidal didn't tell him to do that, because that backfired way too easily, and maybe it was just an instinct thing. Maybe the nerves. I believe there were multiple reasons for Gib falling the way that he did, and the reason why he lost so quickly. I think the nerves definitely got to him. You could tell throughout the press conferences, you could tell throughout the interviews, and you could definitely tell in the fight. I think the nerves definitely got to Gib, because the highlights and the training that we saw in the previews and all of that, that's definitely not what he showed in the fight. And I think if the fight went on a little bit longer, you might have seen him settle in and actually perform. But also, I think he definitely underestimated the 10-ounce gloves. I think obviously they're not fighters, so they probably have, Jake Paul and Gib never really experienced 10-ounce gloves, and I think Jake Paul even admitted that in his post-fight interview. These 10-ounce gloves are something else, and I think Gib underestimated the power that Jake had, and underestimated the power that a 10-ounce glove can do to somebody. And his game plan was all wrong. I understand you're the smaller fighter, so you obviously have to get into their face and you have to fight through their jab, but I just don't think that the way that you were standing, the way that he was crouching, I don't think that was the right game plan at all for Gib. And I feel sorry for him, but at the end, he definitely got what he deserved here. I think Jake Paul definitely was the better fighter. Jake Paul, he used his jab well. He used his reach. He used his height. He did everything right. He looked like a professional fighter in this fight. But that's not to say that we don't really know much about Jake Paul's fighting style now, because this didn't show much. He didn't really show what he could do at all. So one round, 2.5 minutes, it doesn't show if he's really improved or not. And maybe this is going to be a very important factor, because what I'm about to say next, it changes YouTube forever. It really does. It changes YouTube. It changes the landscape of things to come, because this KSI and Jake Paul fight, it's probably going to happen, and it's going to happen this year probably. If you think about it, both fighters seem to be healthy. Jake Paul really didn't get hit at all in this fight. He took care of Gib very quickly, and obviously KSI has had a lot of time to heal up against Logan Paul, so this fight could probably happen at the end of the year, maybe even in the middle of the year, because both fighters do look fit as well. And this is going to be very, very good. I think KSI is a much more balanced fighter compared to Gib, and I think he will probably not do what Gib did. He probably won't go straight up in Jake Paul's face. He will probably do what he did against Logan. He'll probably back up, go for the body shots, maybe a few jabs, and just probably go for that extremely wild right hand. I think that's probably what KSI's game plan is going to be. Then you also got Jake Paul, who we don't really know. We still really only have to go off that Deji fight, because this fight, it didn't prove much to me. It didn't prove much to me because it didn't last very long. We didn't really get to see Jake Paul when he was tired. We didn't really get to see Jake Paul throw proper punches besides a stiff jab, which is what he said that he was going to do. So, yeah, look, I'm really excited. I cannot wait to see this KSI and Jake Paul fight. It looks like it's going to happen. KSI pretty much said if he goes through, Jake Paul goes through Gib, then that fight is going to happen. Jake Paul did what he would set out to do. A lot of people would have said that Jake Paul overlooked Gib, and maybe he did, but it doesn't matter, because overlooking Gib might have, it probably could have been his downfall, but it wasn't, because I think Gib probably, the pressure got to him a lot, and I think that's why he lost this fight. So we can see what happens. I'm really excited. Let that fight happen. Let it happen as quick as possible. Let's get this show on the road, because this is going to change YouTube if it happens. Because Jake Paul is probably a better fighter than Logan, according to even Logan himself. And KSI is only going to get better from his last fight. Now, who's KSI's coach going to be? I don't have a clue. I cannot tell you who KSI's coach is going to be, because it's probably not going to be Vidal Riley, because Vidal's going into another fight now as well. He's come off of his injury. He's looking to fight. So KSI is going to have to get another coach probably, unless Vidal is coming out of his quote-unquote retirement to train KSI. So obviously, I think everybody knows a majority of the people in Australia and England and a lot of people in America, they're all going to go for KSI to win this fight. I think KSI is still the favorite just because we've actually seen him fight a proper fight, and we haven't really seen Jake Paul in a professional way really get hit with 10-ounce gloves. So he still doesn't really know what it feels like, I guess. Maybe he does. Maybe in training they actually fight with 10-ounce gloves. I don't think that they do. But Jake Paul doesn't really know what it's like to get hit with 10-ounce gloves. So we need to see his reaction out of that. So there's still a lot of unknown behind Jake Paul. And it's interesting. This fight is going to be interesting. It's going to be very, very much more balanced compared to this fight. For Gib, I just want to say I'm really sorry that this happened to you. But you still secured the bag. You made your money. I don't think you should stop fighting. But I just definitely think that you need to switch up your game plan a little bit more. I don't think crouching was the best idea. I don't think doing squats in the fight was good at all. And I think that you lost your balance because you did that. Because a jab, any sort of hit, when you're crouching and you get hit, you're gonna fall. It doesn't, like, I'm not a professional boxer or anything. I don't know much about boxing, but you will lose your balance a lot when you don't have the proper stance. And I think you lost your balance, especially in that first knockdown. You lost your balance. And then in the second and the third one, rightfully so, that it got called off because you weren't protecting yourself and you weren't in the correct stance. I think that you being orthodox was your downfall, because I think Jake Paul looked like a professional when defensively tonight. So we'll see what happens. Anyway, this is the Sports Code. Take care and peace.